Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Realize Foundation, a series about lost survivors. And if you're not familiar with us, you can find us at realizefoundation.org, or you can just Google hashtag SaveALifeChallenge and find our website. You can subscribe there, you can donate there. You can watch all of our videos either on Facebook, on this Facebook page, or on YouTube. I also tend to post them in LinkedIn and in our feed. We have a page there. So, super excited today to talk to Lisa and hear her story. She's going to share with us about a friend of hers and probably a little bit of her own experience in there because she has a lot of experience in this field as well. So, looking forward to hearing her story and then we'll, if you guys have any questions, just post in the chat and or on Facebook, and we'll get them answered for you. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Dina.
I'm gonna excuse myself off the screen so people can focus on you and your story, and then I will be back.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, my name's Lisa Rogers, and I very recently lost a friend to suicide. And unfortunately, this was not my first experience losing someone to suicide. I've actually lost many people to suicide. And it's so because it's only been like a month. It's pretty raw. It's pretty raw. I was indoctrinated into a suicide as a possibility, I guess. Very early on, my mother would threaten suicide or attempt suicide because she was in an abusive relationship, and when she couldn't take the abuse anymore, she would either threaten to hurt herself or she would attempt to harm herself. And so I grew up with that kind of just being a reality all the time. And there was a lot of emotional blackmail, whether it was intentional or not, around that. If you upset your mother, she could kill herself. And so I ended up enduring a lot of abuse and being silent because I was in fear of her hurting herself. So then I became responsible for her emotions and her life. I was responsible. I felt, and we're talking 8, 9 years old. I was responsible for whether my mom lived or died, and I was angry with her for that, and I didn't understand. I thought, how can you say you love me and want to leave us with the person who is hurting you and us? And you're going to go and leave us with them. I felt really selfish. I didn't understand it. And then I got a couple of years older, and by a couple of years older, I mean maybe 11, 12 years old. And a suicidal part in me started to form. And when I say a part, I mean like a part, because I don't approach life or myself as one whole thing. I believe that we're all just a bunch of functional and dysfunctional parts kind of operating at the same time, and at different times in our lives we're more functional or less functional based on which parts are kind of active, and new parts come and old parts heal and that kind of thing. And this suicidal part started to form in me because I was enduring chronic abuse, and my suicidal part was a protective part. It wasn't a killer part that wanted me to die. It was the part that said, if it gets too bad, here's the exit. If it gets to be too much, here's your alternative. If you can't take it anymore, here's plan B. And so it was, for me, the only control that I could take at that time, the only power I had in my whole life was the power to make that choice. And it allowed me to endure what I endured. because I knew I had an option if I needed to take it. And so it wasn't a part in me that wanted to see me dead. It was the part in me that wanted to spare me immense pain. And it actually allowed me to continue to endure what I had to live through, and not take my life, because I knew that it was an option, but it took the pressure off, because there's so much pressure in feeling so much emotion, so much pain all the time, right? So just knowing there was a way out took some of the pressure off, rather than feeling like once you know there's no way out, the stress is on, right? There's so much pressure when you think there's just no way out. So for me, knowing I had a way out allowed me to take some of the pressure off and get through what I needed to get through. And so once that happened, I was able to understand what was going on with my mom, how she probably felt the same way about the part in her that was trying to protect her from the abuse, by saying that she was going to hurt herself. It did get her abuser to back off. It just did. And so it worked for her. It didn't work for us kids, for her to be doing that, but it worked for her. And I began to understand from the other side, from, a little bit from her shoes, although they weren't exactly the same shoes, why somebody could love you and want to kill themselves. And I think that's the hard thing for everybody is like, if you loved me, how could you leave me? And they feel like it's selfish, and there's a lot of anger involved. And I understand all that, because I felt that. But I also understand now too that in the times that I've been suicidal, like on the verge of maybe completing suicide, it was like this. I can't even see anything that's over here. All I can see is this, and this is my pain. This is how I'm worthless. This is how I have no purpose. There's no, whatever it is, it's here. So I can't see everything out here that I love and that loves me. I can't even see it. And so in those moments, I have learned that I need to talk to people. I need to tell people what's going on. When I tell someone what's going on in my head, it loses a lot of the power. When I don't tell him, it's like a bird, right, that is flying around, it lands on your head. And you can either shoo it off, or you can choose to let it make a nest and have babies. And so I think for me personally, like the intrusive thoughts of suicide, they come into my head, and me shooing them off is me just texting somebody or calling somebody and saying, hey, listen, I just want to tell you this is where my head's at today. And me not saying anything is like letting that make a nest, and then it grows and grows. And then I'm starting to believe, the lies that my head tells me. Nobody loves you. Everybody, globalizing everything. But if I have a group of people that, I can talk to, where I can express those things, then a lot of it loses its power. And my friend Jen was one of those people. We used to have what's called coffee and company, coffee and conversation, coffee and awkward company, coffee and awkward conversation. And, like my mission at this point in life is to let's get awkward, let's get awkward, and let's talk about the awkward stuff, because we can avoid awkward and, emotionally bypass the important stuff. But nobody ever died of awkward. And if we have those awkward conversations, you just might save somebody's life. So learning how to talk awkward and be awkward and lean into awkward, I think is really my mission right now. But my friend Jen and I would have, coffee and company, and we would get together and we would talk about all the real stuff, all the awkward stuff. And, she shared her history and experience with people in her life and suicide. And I shared mine. And, my first real boyfriend, took his life when I was in middle school. And then, the person I lost my virginity to after that took his life. He was 19. And so suicide just, was always a part of my life history, my timeline. When I was 17, the parents next door, the parents that I wished were mine, they were like the best parents. They made pancakes on Sunday morning. They were normal people. They took us to church and all that. I didn't have a family like that. I had a really dysfunctional family, and I really looked up to them, and I thought they were great. And when I was 17, the mom took her own life, but not before taking the life of her husband, who I ended up, finding. And that was a real trauma for me. And it just rocked me to my foundation, because I understood for the first time, like, if it can happen to them, it can happen to anybody. And all the questions, right? There's so many questions when somebody takes their life. And what were they thinking? What was going on? Did they ask for help? Were there signs? What did we know? What did we not know? All that stuff. The people that are left behind have so many questions that just never really get answered. And that's hard. And so being able to talk about those things with people, when we lose someone to suicide, to have people in our lives that we can say, like, I need to talk about how this makes me feel. I'm angry with the person who took their life, or I'm, furious with the person who took their life, or I'm just whatever, grieving or sad, or whatever it is. Like, we need to be able to have these conversations, and we need people to listen to them, right? So, Jen and I were really good about having these awkward conversations, because we both had this lived experience where it wasn't taboo. It wasn't, we're both very awkward people, but the conversations weren't very awkward, because we both understood that it was just a part of our history and a part of our lives. And I think where Jen and I differed was, I felt like it was a part of my life, and I felt like it was a part of me, a protective part, and it was my history. She felt like it was her destiny. She lost her mom to suicide when she was a kid. And, it was a tremendous loss for her, as you can imagine. And then I met her, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 years ago. And she had some struggles with mental health issues, and, had to work really hard to navigate those and issues of addiction. And she, came into recovery, and she worked really hard. And she experienced the loss of her sister, who took her life. And then a few years ago, she experienced the loss of her other sister, who took her own life. And so now her mom and her two sisters had taken their lives. And she'd always talked about suicide like it was a vacation that she was going to go on someday. It was something that was, like, someday I'm going to go to Disney World. And that's the way that she looked at it. Someday I'll be with my mom. And she felt like it was her destiny. And even though she felt that way, she tried so hard to stay here. She tried so hard to live. She worked hard to change her life and grow as a person. But there was always this thing in the background of, and then someday I'll go on that vacation. And I think for a long time she stayed for us, for her dad, for her friends, more than she even did for herself. So about a month ago, right after her 35th birthday, she took her life. And it was something that was shocking, but we weren't surprised, right? So it wasn't a surprise because she'd always told us this was coming. We just didn't know when, and we were hoping that she would just eventually change her mind. Um, and like on the outside, things were going really well. She was working out. She was losing weight. She was getting healthy. She was taking care of herself physically. She was, her self-care level, like really up-leveled her self-care. And she had so many people in her life who loved her. And she had her dad who she was taking care of. He was older, and he had already lost a wife and 2 children to suicide. And so nobody really expected that this would happen while he was still here. But at the same time, I was thinking about it, like, but she experienced the same loss he did, and maybe she didn't want to experience losing him too. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing about it, is we're just left with so many questions. And the morning that she took her life, because of course, as soon as it happens, and you go through the initial, like, trying to wrap your head around it, and which I couldn't. I was just like, no, like, no, because she was a bright light in the world. She was a unique, special contribution to this world. And I know people can say all sorts of flowery things after someone passes, but she really was. I was looking back through the Facebook feed, and I would post things like, "You have the sweetest brain I've ever met." She just had a way of looking at the world. She was an artist, photographer. She was such a loyal and devoted friend, and we lost something. We as humans, like, lost something when she took her life. I feel like she's where she wanted to be. And I don't know if that's going to piss some people off, but that's just the truth. I mean, she completed what she felt like was her mission since her mom passed. And but for the rest of us that are still here, it's a big hole. It's a big loss. And you go through all the. I went through all the Facebook feed, and I went through all our text messages, and trying to, like, look for signs. What were the signs? But there were always signs with her because she was so open about it. Not just with me, with other people too. And so the signs were kind of always there. Just kind of, when she was doing well, she was doing really well. And that morning on Facebook, she posted a gratitude list, like 10 things she was grateful for. And that afternoon, she took her own life. And for a lot of people, they couldn't reconcile that. And for me, it's easier to reconcile because the part of her that wrote the gratitude list in the morning is not the same part of her that took her life in the afternoon. They're different parts. I have a part of me that's a suicidal protective part. I have a part of me that's a cheerleader, gratitude part. I have a part of me that's, for me, an addictive part. I have a part of me that is a victim part and a hero part, and there's so many different parts, right? And they're all just functioning and dysfunctioning at different levels based on where we're at, what our circumstances are, and trying to get into someone's head to figure out why. I just don't know that we're ever going to have a satisfactory answer that's going to make it okay or justify or put us at ease any more than we are about why. The part, for me, it's as simple as the suicidal part of her, the part of her that felt like it was her mission, her destiny, was just stronger that day than any other part. And on the days before, other parts of her, the parts of her that wanted to, express herself, the parts of her that wanted to belong and be loved, the parts of her that wanted to live, were stronger. And on that day, for whatever reason, that part of her that felt like it was her destiny was strongest, and it won. And um, it's probably one of the scariest things that people who love someone who is suicidal live with, right? That potential that something could happen. And I've lived it with my children who have been suicidal at one time or another. My daughter who had postpartum issues and was suicidal, and my son who just was a teenager and just had a lot of teenage angsty stuff, and that's where, that's a part that developed in him. And as a parent, knowing there's nothing that you can really do to control that, but there are some things that we can do to help, right? So I can tell you what's not helpful. Personally, as somebody who's experienced suicidal thoughts and so forth, is if I tell you that I want to kill myself, take me seriously. Being told no, you don't, doesn't help. Emotionally bypassing the situation by trying to minimize it isn't helpful for the person who has suicidal thoughts or feelings. Having your thoughts or your feelings minimized or dismissed when you're in the most gut-wrenching agony doesn't feel good. If you don't understand, just say I don't understand. If I say, listen, I woke up this morning and my head just saying I want to kill myself. You can say, I don't understand that at all. I don't relate to that, but I'm here to support you and I'll listen. Do you want to talk? That's great. You don't have to understand. I just need somebody to listen and let me have that part get some airtime, to air it out, and then I'll probably go about my day. But I've said to people, I'm thinking about just ending it, and oh no, you won't. You're fine. You're Lisa R. You'll be fine. And man, it just makes you mad. Are you I'm just gonna kill myself on principle because nobody will listen to me when I say this is what I want to do, right? So being able to have these awkward conversations can save somebody's life. Because a lot of times we just need to talk out loud and hear ourselves and have somebody listen, and then not validate that we should, take our own lives, but validate that we're in pain, right? I hear how much pain you're in. I'm sorry that you're in so much pain. And what would help? What can I do that would be helpful? Just asking, and most of the time it's not advice. We don't want it to be fixed for us. We just want somebody to sit and allow us to be in that pain and share that space with us. And that's where things get awkward, because people don't know how to sit in that painful space. People don't know how to hold space for the deep, painful conversations. People are not comfortable with their own pain, let alone other people's pain. But for me, having had Jen have that coffee and company, and we would sit in that space for a long time, for hours. We would just sit in that space and share that pain. I would hold the space for her to share hers, and she would hold the space for me to share mine. And we weren't best friends. We didn't spend every second together or anything like that. But when we did meet, when we did come together, it was always in an intimate space of love and respect, and appreciation for what we could give each other in, holding that space for the awkward conversation. And so once we lose a loved one, then we're the ones that need somebody to hold that space for us, right? Because again, now we're in that pain. I mean, that's what happens when someone takes their life. They kind of pass that pain around, right? And knowing that is one of the things that keeps me from completing suicide. Knowing that I would take my pain and just spread it all over the place, right? I don't want to do that. But we need to develop some people in our lives that we can have these conversations with, and some skills to know how to have those conversations. But it's really just about transparency. The best way to get rid of awkward is just to say, oh my God, I'm feeling so awkward right now, right? Just put it out there. Get rid of the elephant in the room. Just say it. Like, I'm feeling so embarrassed and awkward right now. And then it kind of takes the pressure off to just say what is. And, who in our lives can we have these conversations with? Who's experienced some amount of pain in their lives? Because chances are those are the people that are going to be able to hear about our pain and not flinch or, dismiss or bypass or avoid, because they've experienced pain. People with lived experience tend to be able to hold the space a little easier than people who have not. But when we lose someone to suicide, we need to have people that we can talk to and express all of our feelings, even the ones that are not socially acceptable or, not the way that you see it in the movies or whatever. A lot of the feelings that we go through when we lose someone to suicide are not, they're pretty ugly feelings. And they need their airtime too. I took this course at Johns Hopkins on emotional first aid, and it's for, national crises. Like there's a tornado or there's an earthquake or a building collapse, and you go to the scene and you do an emotional triage to see who is responding to the trauma appropriately and who is not. And if you can get to the people who are not responding appropriately to the trauma in front of them, we can divert them from ever developing PTSD by getting them the help they need immediately. So by identifying who needs the help right there and then, they don't ever have to go into PTSD. That there's a window between the trauma and the PTSD where if the person gets help, if we can identify who the person is, or they can identify it themselves and they get help, they don't have to go down a lifelong road of PTSD. And so having these conversations is that important. So if we have people in our lives that have suicidal ideation or have completed suicide or attempted suicide, we need to build relationships in our lives with people who are willing to have these conversations. Maybe it's a support group of people who are experiencing the same thing, people with lived experience. Maybe it's some relatives or your family members that are going through exactly what you're going through right now. But just developing a group of people who are your go-to people. And they don't always have to be the same person. I mean, it's hard for one person to be the go-to person for everything, kind of like we think our spouse should be, right? But if we know that there's one friend that's really good at dealing with people when they're in anger or rage, then that's maybe who we talk to when we're feeling those things. And if we know somebody that's really good at like holding a space for grief, then we know who to go to when we're grieving in that way. Or, maybe it's like sometimes there's like a sometimes you just want to share some stories or, tell some things and and there's people that you can connect to with that. So who can you go to and when? Figuring that out now. wherever you're at in your experience with this, who can you go to and talk to when you need it, so that when you do need it, it's kind of already there, it's in place. Waiting until you need it to have that conversation, whether you're thinking of suicide or you've attempted it, or you have a loved one that's thinking or attempting or is completed, waiting until it's happened to seek support, it's going to be more difficult, right? Because you're not going to be thinking clearly, and um, we tend to withdraw, right? Isolate, um, you know, shudder, uh, and when we really need the support the most, if we know who our go-to people are, we'll go to them and have those conversations. I wish Jen was still here. Um, I loved her. I told her often how much I loved and respected her, how much she meant to the world. Tried to be a mirror of, hold up a mirror of what we all saw in her that she could never see in herself. And we tried, and she tried. But in the end, the part of her that felt like it was her destiny was just stronger than all that. And I believe she's at peace. It's just the rest of us that are left missing her. And the hole that she kind of left in the world, that needed so many more Jens. um, and it's sad, and it's going to be sad, and it's okay. And I think allowing people to be sad and be in grief, and not try and rush people through their process, not try and fix them and make them okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's more than okay to not be okay. I need to be able to not be okay and have you be okay with me not being okay. Because when you make me feel like I have to be okay now, you put me in a position of choosing you and your feelings over me and my feelings. And if I choose you to make you happy, then I'm emotionally bypassing an important part of my process that I might not come back to. And then it comes out sideways, in addiction or some other weird behavior that I may not even connect to this. So let me be not okay while I'm not okay, and then I will be okay, right? Let's get comfortable with our emotions and other people's emotions, and have the awkward but necessary conversations that could, eventually save somebody's life. Yeah. Whew.
Thank you, Jen. Jen. Well, thank you, Jen, because she's the reason we're here. Although I never got to meet her, I've heard so many great things from you about her, and I know that she is missed. So thank you for sharing your
Thank you for the
story
opportunity.
and all of the, also not just your story, but all your knowledge and wisdom around this subject, because I know that you do work in this area as well, and it's very, it's hard to do work in this area, because it is, sometimes we need to space from it for our own mental health as well.
Yeah.
But it's so important, and I think, just like what our hashtag says, have the conversation. It's just so important, and it sounds so simple, but it is so important. And I think you demonstrated that. And it is like you said, it's not even about knowing what to say. It's just about being there and listening and holding space for somebody, and you know listening to, like, really listening to them and understanding their pain and what they're going through. And maybe through that you can figure out what to say or how to help. But really, what people need is just someone to demonstrate that they care.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and the best way to know what to say is or what somebody needs is to ask them. To say, I'm not sure what to say here. Just say you don't know. I have no idea what to say to you right now, but I'm willing to listen. What what do you need from me in this moment? Do you need a hug? Do you need to? We don't know. So just ask. What can I do right now? How can I help?
Yeah.
And just be willing to serve in that role, whatever it is. I might need a hug, or I might need to talk, or whatever. But to just ask and let it be about the person who's in pain, instead of immediately taking it personally and being angry or scared or whatever. People get scared and they get angry, and then they cut the person off who's in pain.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think the other thing that happens a lot is that someone feels like they have to tell about a time they felt sad or lost somebody or grief. And then I mean, I'm not diminishing their pain either, but it has to be the focus on the person who needs help at the moment and not on what your experiences have been. And I've seen that happen so many times because people don't know what to do. And like you're saying, it's okay. Just say you don't know. Just say
Right.
that you want to be there and support them, but you don't know how. But trying to, just because they're telling you a story doesn't mean you need to tell them a story.
It's so funny because I used to hate that, right? When somebody would do that, I feel like, are they trying to one up me right now? Like, what's going on? Or to hijack the conversation. But then I noticed that I did it too. And I realized that what was going on in that moment was, I'm trying to relate to you. I'm trying to connect with you by saying, oh, I kind of felt that way too. And it's not, I don't think for the most part, it's not people trying to refocus things onto them, or they're not trying to one up, or they're trying to connect and relate. And so knowing that, okay, they're trying to connect or relate, they're not trying to not hear what I'm saying, right? And I've gotten really good at saying, can this not be about you right now? Can we talk about me? Can we not make this about you? Like, I've gotten really good at saying that. Most of us aren't that great at being that blunt. But just knowing that they're coming from a place of wanting to connect. And then you can say, I hear you trying to connect with me right now. But that's not what I need. I just need you to listen. Right. And for us to know that when somebody is sharing something, the best thing we can do is listen and not immediately either try and share how we relate or try and fix it. We're not looking for solutions. We're just looking for an ear, really, right? Is that what you think?
Yeah, I do. And I think sometimes me personally, when I'm having a day in depression or anxiety, it it it's hard for me to talk about it, and it's hard for me to get the words out. And so sometimes a pause, because I can't figure out how to say something, people think that means that I'm done talking, and they talk, and then it just goes away. So sometimes the silence is good because you're just letting them work it out, because maybe they don't know what to say. Maybe they've never felt like this before or never talked about it before. So it's really hard for them too. So it's kind of, like you said, awkward conversations because you don't know what each other is going through, what's going through your mind, what you're trying to say, and sometimes it takes a minute to get it out. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, some of the most awkward conversations are the ones where it's just silence, and people can't stand it. People can't stand a pause in the conversation, or there's silence. People start to get really awkward, and they have to break the silence, right? Instead of just sitting in the silence.
It's true. I've experienced that when I was trying to um, tell someone something about how I was feeling, but I didn't really know how to say it, so it took me a while. And my mom I'm 51, and I just started having these conversations a year ago. And my mom said something to me that kind of surprised me, but totally makes sense now. And it was, she said, I never understood why it was so hard for you to talk about things. And I was like, well, I never understood that that was like something anybody would notice. But, and she also told me that I never cried when I was young, like about anything. Like even at my grandfather's funeral, I was 7. I didn't cry. Like, so I think and it's funny because when I was younger, I always felt like I was going to cry and I would do everything I could not to. So it's the perception from the other side is enlightening to me because I never understood that anyone even knew that. So it's kind of it reflection is good for us because I think sometimes we can learn so much from looking back at things we've done or been through or how we've interacted with other people, whether it's our family or relationships or whatever. We can learn so much from that in order to move forward in a different way. So that's been eye-opening to me in the past year. So maybe that would help someone. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And I think that this video could help lots of people who have maybe lost someone and they don't see through their grief yet. And maybe you can give them some idea of how to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, everybody, we're going to have this video in our Facebook page, our YouTube page. I'm really trying to get all of our videos on our website soon, so you'll be able to find them in any of those places. And I hope that if you have questions or want to have a conversation about it, you will reach out to us. And again, you can find us at realizefoundation.org. And remember that Save a Life Challenge is all about having the conversation.